Namaskar and welcome to today's episode with Garuda. And we have our fabulous author Sanjay Dixit today with the book Unbreaking India, Decisions on Article 370 and CAA. Welcome Sanjay ji to the show.
Namaste.
Namaste, namaste. So we're going to dive right into the book for all the viewers out there. The book is already on pre-order right now. So the book is on order. If you look at the link at the bottom, grpr.in UBI, grpr.in/UBI, it's a short link. So Sanjay, you are going to dive right into the book. And when I was reading this book, what I thought really fascinating was that we are talking about Article 370 and CAA, but this book is a remarkable history of this entire movement going back, almost, I would say, at least 70 years, but even before that, maybe even 100 years. So
Yes, I mean, if you take Article 370, then it goes back exactly 1300 years.
Yes, exactly. So it's fascinating when I was reading it to see that it's a very topical issue about what just happened, but you've really dived into the history which is going so far back. And before I go into it in detail, I want to just ask you one thing. Tell me about this cover. What is this? What is happening on this cover? I think a lot of people are very curious, and we have this map of India, but it doesn't look like a map of India. It's split up in very strange ways. What is this cover about?
This is that original thought that went into Pakistan's idea of Pakistan after that Lahore resolution of 1940, in which the Pakistan resolution was made. It was drafted by Zafarullah Khan, of all people. He was a great Ahmadiyya. And Ahmadiyyas and Shias were all in the forefront. In fact, they were the leaders. And these guys, your Barelvis, who were the masses behind Jinnah, they were actually carrying the cart. उसको बोलते हैं कि वो अहमदियों और शियों की पालकी ढो रहे थे. उस पालकी के कहार थे ये बरेलवी.
Achha.
So this map was designed by a gentleman called Rahmat Ali, and he envisaged, exactly like Gangadhar Adhikari of the Communist Party of India later, that he envisaged that there would be a Commonwealth of Pakistan. And that Commonwealth of Pakistan would mean that wherever they had more than 20% population of Muslims, that would become a Muslim enclave. So they would have Pakistan on the west and Pakistan on the east, in which, if you see, there is very little saffron over there in the east also. That's the only thing that they left for the Assamese. The rest of it was all colonized in the manner of the East Bengal that they had in 1905. If you remember that 1905, East Bengal had the whole of Assam and the whole of Northeast, actually. Whatever you see Northeast today, it was all part of East Bengal after the 1905 Partition of Bengal. And Muslims loved it. In fact, Nawab of Dhaka was the main champion of that. And the anti-partition movement, the anti-Bengal partition movement, that was led by revolutionaries. There were also political parties involved. Congress was involved for some time, but then it kind of backtracked. But all the other, that revolutionary fervor that was generated and which ultimately resulted in the 1911 annulment of the partition of Bengal, it was a great setback for the Muslims, actually. That's something that is never brought out. And also that was a great foundation from which a really resurgent Indian national movement could have begun, but then that was kind of put paid by the pacifist policies that Mahatma Gandhi adopted later. And he kind of
that's actually a very good segue. I wanted to get into that because
yes, so that is why
we talk about
Rahmat Ali. This is the Rahmat Ali prescription.
Yes. The map is the Rahmat Ali prescription, and if they completely had their way, this is what India would end up looking like, which is little scattered bits of land across disconnected bits of land. But
Exactly.
you brought up Mahatma Gandhi, and one of the things that was really fascinating again about your book is that you look at, whatever is happening in 370 CA, all these, as this thing is seeded in the pre-independence struggle. All of the kind of even rhetoric that is coming now is the rhetoric of partition, right? This is the rhetoric, and the way of engaging is also, we haven't really changed. So I wanted to bring this one quote up on the screen, which is, this is a quote from your book, where by cementing a pact with the religious leaders of the Muslims, Mahatma Gandhi achieved the following: a recognition that Muslims would be approached only through their religious leadership, and a recognition that Muslims would prefer religious issues, however regressive, to secular issues like home rule or Swaraj. This is again very powerful, because I see this replicated over and over again in independent India. This this this
Exactly.
this same, because I was very, even growing up, I used to be very kind of surprised. Why is it that always your even the Congress party, in the way it was dealing with, and in fact later other parties also ended up having the same thing, that they're always assuming that the Maulvi or the Muslim thing, firstly, that there is a separate Muslim constituency, and I find it. I'll put a little funny context to it, because how do you determine whether something is a special group? For instance, why isn't all the fat people in India a special group? That you say, okay, we are going to talk to only representatives of the fat people, right? Or why is it that you could, or why is all engineers in India not a special group, right? So you could split up India. When you talk about this whole minority, there are 1,000 ways that you could splice up the population of any country, right? On and so many different, but specifically this notion that is going to be split up on the basis of religion. That's how you're going to determine a minority, and then all of the engagement is going to happen with these religious representatives. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, but if you look at it, the irony of it is that it is not even majority minority as it happened in the pre-independence India. And why I brought in the 1905 Partition of Bengal and its annulment is because that particular movement proceeded in a totally different way, and that was a truly secular movement, and it was against regressive Muslim clergy. In fact, uh, as I mentioned just before this, that Nawab of Dhaka was the main fulcrum of the partition of Bengal, and Muslim League was very much in favor of the partition of Bengal. And in spite of that, the movement was so fierce. It had so much of revolutionary spirit, what we call Chhatra, the Kshatriya spirit of the Sanatan Dharma, that the uh, British ultimately gave in. And Mahatma Gandhi coming and striking up this kind of a regressive alliance with the Muslims completely undid that Shatra and that revolutionary fervor and what I would call the passion, the real national passion that had been generated. That was completely negated. And the funny thing was that he did it, and he did it on the basis of Muslim, non-Muslim. That's what the Muslim League had been demanding. It wasn't even majority minority. If it had been majority minority, even then there would have been a rationale behind it.
Right.
But Muslim, non-Muslim has no rationale except that there is a regressive group of people who are supremacist and who do not want to integrate. And then you go and you strike up a pact with their regressive religious leadership in the name of supporting the Caliphate movement, which is a totally anti-democracy movement. And you kind of completely give up the gains that the nationalists had achieved. So it is a very, very unfortunate episode in the history, the support to the
This
non-cooperation movement of the Caliphate Committee.
this caliphate movement is very interesting also, because मुझे याद है कि हम हिस्ट्री में पढ़ते थे, ये खलीफा खलीफा करके हमको बताया जाता था कि ये मूवमेंट है, और हमको हिस्ट्री में तो कुछ ढंग से पढ़ाया भी नहीं जाता था उसका, तो जाने अनजाने में क्या खलीफा है कि अच्छी चीज होगी, हम इसी तरह से हम सोचे जाते थे. it is only now when I go back and start looking at history. I mean, what they're fighting for is ISIS, right? I mean, this is ISIS was fighting for the caliphate. So
Exactly. Erdogan is trying to become the caliph now.
yeah. Of course. Turkey is now. I mean, Turkey was the original Ottoman Empire caliphate. The when it was disbanded at that time. But what I'm saying is that this खलीफा मूवमेंट जो जिसके लिए महात्मा गांधी वो कर रहे थे, आंदोलन कर रहे थे, ये आईसिस के लिए आंदोलन कर रहे थे. कैलिफेट तो वही हुआ ना.
Yes, I mean ISIS also wanted caliphate. Now
Yes.
Erdogan wants caliphate, and the
Yes.
funny thing is that the caliphate had all these people. The entire Arab world was under the thumb of the caliphate, and that same Arab world is now again against Turkey. So that they do not want that caliphate to come and rule over them.
Right.
And Mahatma Gandhi, actually, by supporting the caliphate movement, what he did was that he basically went against the aspirations of all these countries who wanted to come out of the imperial yoke of the caliphate.
Right.
Whether all the Arab countries were there, what you have today, Iraq, Syria, the Palestine, the entire Israel, what you have Israel and Palestine today, this entire Middle East was under the Ottoman yoke. Except some part of what is today Saudi Arabia, the Najd part, the Hejaz, which Hejaz province, which has Mecca and Medina, was under the Ottomans. So they used to run the Mecca pilgrimage.
And this is the thing that really impressed me about your book, is that how you have contextualized today's event in both Muslim history and Muslim theology, like with a deep understanding of of the Islamic history that is brought to bear on. So this agitation that happens in Delhi about some this thing that the CAA thing that government has done. It is not something that has just happened. It has an entire narrative that has been set over not only over 100 years, over centuries. In fact, in a way, if you look at how the entire history and theology of this has played out. So I wanted to bring this one quote which you had said, and this is very, very topical in the context of the violence that we have seen happen recently, where this Maulana Hazrat Mohani said in a Muslim League meeting, Moplas massacred Hindus because they were frightened. Can we make the connection with this is what you asked, can we make the connection with the sacred minority syndrome, scared minority syndrome that we hear even in today's discourse? Yes, it originated in 1920s. तो आज भी ये बोल रहे हैं डरा हुआ मुसलमान, right? And at the same time,
let me tell you, I said that it originated in 1920s only because I contextualized it in the 20th century. But basically, it originated in the what is called 18th century with Shah Waliullah.
Okay.
Because Shah Waliullah was the one who said that, okay, that now it has become Darul Harb, Marathas are ruling, because Marathas had come and captured Delhi in 1757. And the saffron flag was flying over the Lal Qila along with the Mughal Parcham. So it was at that time they say, okay, that we have lost ground, that our right. Actually, the Muslim theology, it cannot think of being under anyone else or working under anyone else. They imagine themselves to be the rulers, whether they are in minority or they are in majority. They will always be the ruler. I have quoted Khwaja Hasan Nizami in the book, and you can read that quote if you. I don't know whether you got to read that, but that exactly encapsulates the thought of this ruling class, the Ashraf ya Maulvi Maulana class. I call this AMM class. You have the AMU and you have this AMM, Ashrafia Maulvi Maulana class. So the thinking of that class has been the same for centuries, and the seed is Fatawa Alamgiri. Everybody follows Fatawa Alamgiri to the T, and it would be a great service if you can get Fatawa Alamgiri translated in Hindi and English and put it in the hands of every Indian. That would tell you what the philosophy is and what they aim for and what the methodology is going to be, whether you see it in Kashmir or you saw it in Mopla massacre or you see it in Shaheen Bagh or you see it in, say, what is going on in West Bengal today, and if you even see in the movements that take place in Bangladesh against the minority Hindu population, everything is seeded in Fatwa Alamgiri.
So yeah, I think this is why people absolutely have to read this. As I said, a very compelling book, because there's so many things I did not know. You know, a lot of times, so many books cross my desk, and there are some books where I say, okay, I mostly know what is there. The author has said it in a nice way. That's why I like it. But when I'm reading your book, I was like, wow, there are just so many things. You know, every time you're talking about that I did not know at all. And if I didn't know it, it's likely that many other people also don't know it. So I think reading this and actually getting to the root of this, to me, is so important. And this is where I bring in this next quote that you have, which is, you know, this is Jinnah is saying this, and this is also again the
No,
idea.
this is Muhammad Ali Johar.
There's an ideology of supremacy, and in this ideology of supremacy, Jinnah is saying, according to my religion creed, I do hold an adulteress and a fallen Muslim to be better than Mr. Gandhi. And this is, of course, straight from theology, which is saying that if you've accepted accepted being a Muslim, you are superior to any other human being on the planet. Doesn't matter how pious or good the human being be, or how evil or cruel or criminal the Muslim would be, but by theology, that Muslim would be better than anybody else.
No, this is not Jinnah. This is Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar.
Okay, Muhammad Ali.
Maulana,
Yeah.
So Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar was the one who was the nominal head of the Caliphate Committee. And Mahatma Gandhi has given his be all and end all to be in his good books. And he supported the another thing that I brought out is the non-cooperation movement, which is supposed to have been run by the Congress, was actually the non-cooperation movement of the Khilafat Committee. And the Khilafat Committee launched it on the 1st August 1920, and Congress joined it later. So if we are taught in our history books that the non-cooperation movement was a grand Congress initiation and by Mahatma Gandhi, it's completely false history. He merely joined the non-cooperation movement of Muhammad Ali Johar and his brother Shaukat Ali and Abul Kalam Azad and many others, including Asrat Mohani and others. So the context is that they were some great, they were great friends, and the only thing was they ultimately broke off on the point of non-violence. And Mahatma Gandhi had gone on to a fast after the Chauri Chaura thing and all that, and that fast was taken in the house of Muhammad Ali Johar. That was the degree of friendship. The 21-day fast was undertaken in the house of Muhammad Ali Johar. And he was the one who actually got him to break that fast, and he was the one who offered him juice to break the fast. And this is that man. He even, he was even briefly made the president of the Congress, Muhammad Ali Johar. And immediately after this, he's saying this.
Wow.
So you know that where this is coming from.
This saying is so dramatic, because this is after, one side is bending over backwards. Gandhi has put all his effort to supporting this so-called caliphate, which again I want to remind people that the caliphate is what ISIS is fighting for. So this is the secular Gandhi, secular Congress fighting for the caliphate and the Khalifa movement. And then the other side that he is fighting for is actually saying that even the worst, most sinful, most criminal Muslim is better than Gandhi, because this is according to our theology, right?
Oh, exactly. Muhammad Ali Johar, in fact, he was so correct in his theology that he chose to be buried in Jerusalem. He said that he would not even be buried in India because it is Darul Harb.
Right.
it is unpious land. So he had himself buried in Jerusalem.
Wow.
So that was the kind of fanaticism that he was possessed with. Why I in fact should not call it fanaticism. That was I should say the religious correctness.
Yeah,
religiously he is absolutely correct. That's what his religion teaches him.
These are fundamentals of fanatics, but they are the ones who are actually following the what their religion is teaching them, right?
this bending over backwards and this appeasement, this convinced the Muslims, and that's why they always supported Gandhiji. Even today, all the Muslim leadership, the Muslim clergy, they want us to become to follow Gandhiji's ideas, because they found him a very convenient person um, to deal
So
with,
in
and
the
and to beat him with his own stick of non-violence,
and
and
there's the
understanding that all that rioting tactics, the strategy. I have described the strategy, that H.V. Sheshadri's words, and that strategy is that in dealing with anyone for that matter, not just the Hindus, the strategy is first acrimony, then accusations, then claims, then demands, then denunciation, and then street rioting.
yes,
And
yes,
after that, there's a follow up. And the follow up is that if the street writing yields the results, then you claim victory, Battle of Badr Day, or you say that, okay, it was Allah's wish that they granted you a victory. And if you fail and you suffer greater losses, then you play victim. That comes very easy to the Muslim leadership. So that's been going
and
on for so many years, so many, if not
the,
centuries, but certainly from 20th century onwards, it's very, very clear.
the other part I want to bring in here, though, is that there is, of course, what Gandhi and the Congress leadership do, but the so-called part of the so-called secular historians and secular academics, and you start to touch on it, which I again found very interesting, where you're talking about, that this whole there's this whole theories that are coming out of Aligarh and Allahabad University, a lot of this after independence even, where this whole very genocidal and cruel campaign that happened of the Islamic conquest of India has turned into some kind of liberation movement, the liberation of low caste, which again is completely not historical, because if you read the actual accounts, the so-called low castes were at the forefront of actually resisting the invasion. And there's so many stories. In fact, we even document in Saffron Sword so many stories of resistance that are coming from across the spectrum. So this whole thing was turned into the Islam was a liberating force. So what is the story of that? How do they manage to do this?
This was the Aligarh school that led that movement, and that was Irfan Habib's father, Muhammad Habib, who was the prime mover in this. And Muhammad Habib also got political clout later on, because he aligned with Motilal Nehru, joined his Swaraj Khilafat party, because after Congress and the Khilafat committee broke up, Motilal Nehru, they, Motilal Nehru formed, along with another Congress leader. I think it was a Bengali gentleman. I'm forgetting his name. They formed what is called a Swaraj Khilafat party. And the Swaraj Khilafat party, Muhammad Habib became a member of that, came very close to Motilal Nehru. Then later on, Motilal Nehru went back to Congress, became its president in 1928. And 1929, of course, he passed on his mantle to his son. So the dynasty politics is quite old in the Indian National Congress. And this gentleman was very close to Motilal Nehru, and he got to tutor, he got to inspire his son, and he got to tutor Motilal Nehru's granddaughter. And Muhammad Habib's disciples, in that order, you can see Satish Chandra, and of course his son Irfan Habib, and the redoubtable Nurul Hasan.
Yes.
You know Nurul Hasan, I guess. He was the education minister of India in 1971, 1977, after the communist takeover of the academia. So all this went in very nicely, and the communist takeover of the Indian history actually began when Muhammad Habib inspired Jawaharlal Nehru to write his Discovery of India. This also I mentioned that for such a person to write such a book, a Discovery of India, and without knowing, at least he's not mentioned it, so I assume that he did not know what the doctrine of discovery was in in the Christian theology.
Christian context.
Without knowing that, he writes Discovery of India. So basically, I sometimes say that he did the same thing that the church was doing with the discovery of South America and other places, also the discovery of India.
Because
So he seems to have discovered India in the same manner, appropriated it for himself.
So I think this is a good segue into asking about the role of the communists. Of course, we saw just now in the Delhi riots 2020 book, and then before that in the urban naxals, that really, there is this alliance that has happened between radical Islam and between the communists, which is very strange if you think about it, because the communists are presumably, they claim to be atheists, and they claim that religion is an opium of the masses, and they're all of this. At the same time, they repeatedly ally with the radical Islamists and fundamentalists. I have never been really able to understand how this works and why it works in this particular way. And I'm going to put this one quote from the book up there, which is this Adhikari thesis, was a position paper authored by Gangadhar Adhikari, who was briefly secretary of the Communist Party, that the idea of one nation, one people, one never existed at any point in India's long history. And he characterized the various regions of India as different individual nationalities. And this trope is picked up again and again. If you look at even more recently in communist writing, and this is the same phenomenon that leads to South Asianism, by the way. This was also picked up in the Cold War trope and by CIA and the US, because they wanted to say, well, India was never really a nation, so it can be broken up, and so therefore it's just a region. It's just a region of South Asia. There is no Indian civilization. There is no Indian people. It doesn't make sense. It's all a collection of sub-nationalities. So give a little flavor of what is this Adhikari thesis, and how did this come out to be, and why does it still such a favored thesis with the communists, and also their relationship with, what is this communist Islam relationship? I never get it.
Let's see, it is easy to get it if you do not treat communism as an ideology and treat communism as a religion. I treat communism as the fourth Abrahamic religion and the third imperialist Abrahamic religion, because Judaism is not really an imperialistic ideology. These three, Christianity, Islam, and communism, these three are the same. They have the same two-valued binary, and even if there is no binary, they have to create it. And all of them have a book. They have a book, and all of them have a prophet. The communism has Das Kapital as its book, or the Communist Manifesto as its book. And they have Marx as his prophet, and then you got Lenin, Stalin, Mao as the saints. So it is exactly that. It is that same imperialist ideology that Islam and Christianity are. And because of that, it finds easy connections with them. If it has what is called a third adversary, then its first impulse to ally with one of these two. You can see that everywhere. Unless it is in conflict with one of these, then they will talk about, like he was in conflict with Christianity in Europe, and that time he would talk about things like religion being an opium and all.
When any of these get dominance, then they of course erase every other. Like when communists gets dominance, like in China, it's erasing Islam. When Islam got dominance in Iran, right, where communists had helped them in the revolution, the first people who were strung up on the posts after the Iranian revolution were the communists, right?
Right.
Either the Islamists or the communists will get dominance, they will completely wipe out the others.
Absolutely. Look at the Central Asian republics. Look at Central Asia, which is I think, one of the strongest parts of the Muslim empire.
Right.
Look at the state of Islam in Central Asia. And about 100 odd years, not even 100 years, I think about 70 odd years of communism, and they were almost wiped out Islam from Central Asian republics. They are now Islamic only in name.
Right.
So it is there. Okay, they will help each other, but then once the third element has been taken out, then they will be at each other's throat. The
Absolutely.
best example, of course, is Iran. Then there is Central Asia. And of course, you can see that in China now.
Absolutely. And again, I want to just bring back the discussion, and we're going to take a few questions from the viewers. The book we are talking about is Unbreaking India: Decisions on Article 370 and the CAA by Sanjay Dixit ji. Absolutely fascinating book. If you want to read one book about the entire context of what is happening with the agitations on the streets, with the riots that are happening, the Delhi riots, and before that about the Article 370 about CAA, but really not just like what happened today, but the entire history of this. This is one book that I can completely and wholeheartedly recommend, because, as I said, I just learned so much from reading it that I did not know of. So one of the questions, I'm going to take a couple of questions. One they're saying is that this one, Hindus united Bengal annul the partition, if I'm correct. So why could we not save Bharat from getting partition? Why could we not save Bharat from getting partition? Was partition inevitable? What is there?
I did mention it. I did mention it that that Chhatra spirit was completely nullified by Mahatma Gandhi and his pacifism. He
Right.
kind of enervated the entire Hindu conscience so much that he never appealed to that spirit, and he kept suppressing that spirit all the time.
Right.
Just imagine if in 1946 Gandhiji had stuck to his word and said that there will be a divided India only over my body, only over my dead body. Had he given a call, then what would India have done? India would have risen as one.
Right.
And we are not weak people, and we are not insipid people.
Right.
Whenever an occasion has risen, and you know this, and you have documented it in your Saffron Swords book by Manoshi, that Indians have never refrained from taking up arms in defense of what they hold dear.
Right. Right.
They've never balked at this. They have always been upfront. So that is one thing, the cowardice that you cannot accuse any Indian of.
Absolutely.
This is what happened here. They were actually completely misled into it. And I can tell you this, and I have documented this, that had it not been for Hindu Mahasabha and Savarkar and elements of RSS, then you would have lost the whole of Bengal and whole of Punjab. It was only their late resistance and the support they got from Vallabhbhai Patel that we could even salvage the half of Punjab and the half of Bengal that we have. It was Savarkar who militarized the Hindu youth, who advised them to go and join the British Army. Otherwise, had British Army been 50-50, and you can imagine anything could have happened. One of the main reasons that partition happened was 34% of British Army was Muslim in 1946.
This is such an important point. This eroding of the Kshatriya spirit, not only eroding of the Kshatriya spirit, making ahimsa some kind of normative ideal that one must always aim at in the way that Gandhi did it, which really suited the British, if you think about it. And this is where our new book on Netaji also is bringing out that this whole hagiography of Gandhi getting India freedom, of course, isn't based on facts, because the British themselves in their own archives are saying that he had almost no part whatsoever to play in India, in the British leaving India, but they were afraid of the mutiny in the armed forces and so on and so forth, which is why they were leaving. So this Kshatra Tej, this rising of the Kshatriya spirit, this is really fascinating to hear you say that the one way partition could be avoided is if one party said or Hindu said, no way, over my dead body, as Gandhi had said, and that was actually put into action, saying this is not going to happen, we are not going to take it, right, where this country is divided. So I think I'm going to close. I'm going to take one more comment. There somebody was talking about this notion of takiya, and can you explain takiya, because it seems to be a concept that comes up again and again, and people are saying, please explain takiya and the treaty.
Al-Taqiyya, actually, it's called Taqiyya, not Taqiyya.
Huh.
Al-Taqiyya.
Okay.
And Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So this is what Al-Taqiyya is. Actually, it is one of the commandments in the Hadith. It is. I don't remember. I think 8.178 or something in Al-Bukhari, Hadith Al-Bukhari, and that says that any deception that advances Islam is permissible. So that is the root. That is the root from where it comes from. And Treaty of Hudaybiyah is a classical example of that. And it is there. Every Muslim worth his salt knows this, that, okay, you go into a treaty when you are weak. And every treaty advances Islam, because you manage to save yourself by entering into a treaty. And when you are powerful, then you be ruthless. There's so many commandments that when you are in power, then you be ruthless.
And there's, of course, that Meccan phase and Medinan phase that happens also, right? In the
Yes. The Meccan phase in from what is called 610 to 622, he could not even get about 100. There are estimates vary from about 50 to about 110. That's all the number of followers that he could get. And the Meccans also faltered in the sense that if the Meccans, they were really democratic. Otherwise, if they had been like the Prophet, then they would have finished him off, and that would have saved them, and also a lot of others. But then they were benign with him. They were considerate. They even let him escape. And then when he got power, he was ruthless. So that's how it is. That's how it goes.
So this is I think this is a good note to end, and just a teaser to the book as well. As I said, this book is completely impossible to put down because it brings so much scholarship and so much insight into what is happening. It is not about current events, even though it appears to be about current events. It's about the entire context of what has happened today and what will keep happening unless we are awake and alive to the points that Sanjay ji has brought in this book. Again, the book is Unbreaking India, and I urge everybody to put it on pre-order. It should be out around Diwali time, and this would be, of course, making a great book. We have to revive this Kshatriya spirit again, as Sanjay ji is saying. I mean, that really, a lot of the whether we are talking about Saffron Swords or Netaji book or this Unbreaking India, it's coming down to the fact that we were never passive. We were Shakti Upasaks. We literally pray to the Mother Divine as a power, as a Shakti. And so from there we went to this very passive notion of everybody is the same, hum sab ek hain, and then we go into this ahimsa as a normative idea. So amazing scholarship coming and overturning it. Thank you, Sanjay ji, for being with us, and urge again everybody to go and pre-order his book. Namaste.
Namaste, Sankrant. Thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you. Bye-bye.